Okay, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for everyone on Zoom. Can you hear us okay? Someone let us know. Is the audio okay on Zoom?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a full agenda today. Just items of general business. Please make sure to sign in over here. If you need the Wi-Fi password, it's over here on the wall, but it's since with a capital S, 1957. And the bathrooms, the men's is all the way down the hall, turn right, and it's just past the stairs. And then the women's room is just down the hall on the right, past the reception desk. I guess let's go ahead and get started. So I've been running this group for 27 years, and I've never presented at it today. So you're welcome. So just bear with me because I'm new at this. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about a project that I did for the city of Dayton, Oregon. What? Oh, sorry. I thought it was. Is that better? Okay, so I did this project for the city of Dayton, and we just concluded it less than a month ago. So just a little bit of background. In June of 2022, we had a request that came through our land use planner who works with the city. And they were wondering if we could do a web map of their historic properties because they had some grant funds left over from another project that needed to get spent. So I thought, yeah, we could do that. I had previously done a static map of their historic properties, so it was real easy to convert that into a web map. And they were very pleased with the results. They have a very active and engaged historic preservation committee, and they were just thrilled to pieces with it. And they said, can we do this for our cemetery? They have a very historic cemetery that they are very proud of. And so we thought, well, we could explore this. They had done a project, a restoration project with a consultant a couple of years before, where they had done a full inventory of the cemetery, all the markers, the inscriptions, pretty much everything in the cemetery, slabs and curbs and monuments and everything you could think of. And they all came together in this PDF document. And so at the end of the document, there was this map. And we looked at that and said, huh, that looks like it might have come out of a GIS, because otherwise, how do you map a cemetery without, going out and GPSing everything? So we had the city go back to the consultant and ask, do they have GIS files? And lo and behold, they had shape files that they provided to us. And we were like, great, that's fantastic. So then we started looking at the data, and it was weird. So, Juan Carlos and I looked at it. We did some research. We were trying everything we could, looking at nothing made sense. So we went back to the consultant. I had the city go back to them and ask, do you have a specific coordinate system or projection system you're working with? Do you have a projection file? This was the answer that came back. The enlarged font and bolding is mine for emphasis. I just want everyone to take this in for a second, okay? ArcView, and when I say ArcView, I mean 3.x ArcView. The one that hasn't worked on Windows since what, 8.1?
Oh gosh, it's probably been about 12 years.
Yeah. How hard do you have to work in 2018 to do anything in ArcView 3x, right? So yeah. That wasn't the answer that we were hoping to hear. And not only was it done in ArcView, but it was just done in space, and there was no metadata, there was no coordinates. They did take very precise measurements though. Not that that helped in our case, but So, yeah. So we figured, well, we should be able to do something with that. So we told the city that, yes, we believe we can do this project. We had to give them an estimate before we were even really sure how we could get this project done, because they had a time limit as to when they had to apply for the grants for this project. So they applied for the grant in February of last year. It was approved in April. We had to spend a portion of it by the end of that fiscal year, and then the rest of the project was done in this fiscal year, completed at last month. So the end product that they really wanted was a web map application where people could search on a name and locate the grave, because it's a very old cemetery. People doing genealogy are wanting to find their relatives, and they call the city and they go, "Where is this grave?" And they say, "Don't know." Here's a PDF document with 500 grave sites in it. You can just read through it, find it that way. So they wanted an application that was searchable by name. And then they also wanted a story map, because they'd seen one that the City of Sisters had done for their historic downtown, really loved it. And so, yeah, we thought we could probably do that, even though we don't know exactly how we're going to do all of this stuff. But we had to get them the information so they could apply for the grant. So the first step was taking that data that was in no known coordinate system and figuring out how to make it usable. So we selected 33 of the grave markers, and then had their code enforcement guy go out with the GPS and collect GPS points that we could use as control points, and then do a transformation. It went okay. There was some distortion, and so I ended up having to compare it to the consultant's map, where things looked weird. I just had to manually move stuff around. But at least we were able to get it into a usable format. And the only thing that we converted was the grave markers. They collected all kinds of stuff. I mean, they collected bushes and trees and everything you can think of in that cemetery. They were very thorough. But all we really cared about were the grave markers. So then the next step was having to manage the tabular data that they gave us in Excel files. And there were two different files. One was an inventory that was provided by the consultant, and it had all kinds of data like the grave marker type, the materials, inscriptions, names, treatment that was needed, and then they had some photo links because they took photos of all of the restoration and every step of that. The other Excel file was one that's maintained by the Historic Preservation Committee, and it's on historic residents, and it has like birth dates, death dates, marriage dates, spouse names, and they really wanted to attach that data to the grave markers just so that you have information about everyone interred there. Well, there wasn't like data for all of the people in the grave the cemetery, so it was kind of confusing. We had like a mix of data. Some was for grave markers, some was for individuals. So that was a challenge. And I kind of quickly realized that it wasn't going to be as simple as just a one-to-one join, just because we had all this complicated stuff. So that was the issue, is trying to figure out how do you bring in this other file, because we had a one-to-one relationship between the inventory spreadsheet and the points. It was this other decedent detail spreadsheet that was the challenge. So I've never done this before, and I don't recommend doing this. I wouldn't do it again. I would have more time to do my research, but because I didn't know any better, I just decided I was going to duplicate the grave marker points for the ones that had more than one name on the markers, so that we could search by name and then be able to link each individual record to those points. So there was some manual work for, entering, data for the points and the tabular data in order to link those up. And I experienced many, many, many problems with the table joins. And I don't know if it's that ArcGIS Pro is pickier than ArcMap, but I ended up having to pull some stuff into ArcMap to do. Sorry, Eric, I know how you feel about that. This took much longer than it sounds like it did. And I was like literally pulling my hair out. It was really difficult. And it was a terrible way to approach this. So I would definitely figure out a better way next time. But finally got the tables joined and then created the web map. So this is just a static shot of the web map. And it was pretty simple to do. I did this in the Experience Builder, and I'll do a demo at the end here. I did have some challenges bringing data into ArcGIS Online, because we have the rows that are the linear features, and then we had the row numbers that I wanted to do. I had trouble with the labeling showing. I wanted to show the row numbers at the top and bottom of each line. Couldn't figure out how to do that in ArcGIS Online, so I just figured I'll create these points. So I snapped them to the endpoints of the lines. And that worked great in ArcGIS Pro, but then when I brought it into ArcGIS Online, the points were offset. So I called tech support. And they looked at it, I gave them the data, and they came back and they said, you know, that this issue is caused by blah, 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 blah. But the technician was not able to reproduce the error on their end. So they weren't able to tell me how to avoid this in the future. So, okay. They did take my shape files and put them into a geodatabase, and that solved the issue. So I guess the lesson from this is just use geodatabase in the first place. So then creating the web app, there were no challenges with that. Moving on to the story map, we had a few challenges with that. Biggest one was that writing the narrative was not included in the project scope, but the Historic Preservation Committee in the middle of the project kind of said, you know what, we don't really feel comfortable. We're not writers. We didn't know we were going to have to do all of this. And I'm like, I don't know your city and your history, so you really have to provide this information. So I just kind of talked them through it and said, you know, let's start with a rough outline, and you know, we can just do a little bit of history on Dayton, the history of the cemetery, talk about the founders, the families. So they were able to pull together a lot of that information from documents that they already had. The city provided the photos, most of the photos of the people and places. We obtained some other photos and media from other sources. And it's still a work in progress. In fact, I did some updating of it yesterday. So that'll just continue. Just to sum up some of these challenges, the geographic data not being in a usable coordinate system. We had some delays with getting the tabular data. We started this process last year, and I didn't actually really get to do much work on it until this spring, because the Historic Preservation Committee was delayed with getting us that tabular data. That's what we were waiting on for a long time. The table joining issues, the data display issues in ArcGIS Online, and then compiling the story map from multiple sources. But in the end, we successfully transformed the data. The story map, which I had never done a story map before, this was my very first one, and it was pretty darn easy. So kudos to ESRI for making something easy.
It happens by accident.
Yeah. And we have a happy client. They were really happy with how it worked out. Lessons learned. Because we did this kind of backwards, you know, we had to give them an estimate and, you know, try to figure out a methodology before we could even really tell them if we could do the project, so that they could apply for the grants. Ideally, it would be nice to have time to, you know, research different methodologies and factor in that time to the timeline. Scheduling deadlines for project phases, which is very challenging when you're dealing with volunteers because they're retirees and they have other stuff going on. And when you say, I'd really like this by the end of the month, and they say, but I'm going to Aruba next month. So clarify the expectations at the project outset to avoid surprises, which can also be difficult with volunteers because, you know, they were told up front, you're going to need to provide the narrative. When it came time to do it, they kind of sat down and said, we don't know how to write very well. So, and then the last thing is be flexible because of that. So I will just show a quick demo. So this is the City of Dayton's website. And under community resources, oh, I'm sorry, let me figure out how to switch that. How do I switch that?
Share screen instead of share window.
You can share and share again.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop share. Sorry, I told you I'm new at this. Okay, here. Okay, cool. So this is the city of Dayton's website, and under community resources, and under the history, this is our historic properties web map. And that's actually embedded in the story map. But this is a direct link to the web app, the cemetery web app, and then this is to the story map. So I won't go through all of this, but one of the challenges I had with putting together the story map is that I didn't want to have too much text because that's boring and people glaze over and, you know, they have to read too much. So my husband and I actually went out there and took some pictures. This is one of my husband's pictures. And so we just have, you know, the history of Dayton. This is the historic sites web map. You can fully interact with it in the story map. Got a little history of Dayton, history of the cemetery. It's actually interesting. The cemetery ended up being owned by the school district because at the time that it was donated for a cemetery, the school district was the only government organization in the Dayton area. So they actually had possession of it until 2018 when it was finally transferred to the city's ownership. Apparently that was not uncommon in those times. So we've got family leaders, some families, notable families that settled the area, some notable individuals. And then there is a section on the cemetery restoration. They've got some before and after pictures. Another one of my husband's pictures. And then this is the web map app. And it's really pretty simple, which is what they wanted. You know, it's pretty intuitive. You can zoom in and see some labels, click on a marker. And if there's more than one name on the marker, you can just scroll through the different results. We've got the photos of the markers. I think each grave marker has at least one photo. And then there's just, you know, all this information. So this is a compilation of the data from both of the databases that's in the table. And then the search is what they really wanted to be able to do, is to search on a name. And so I've got it configured. You can search by last name, first name, or the names on the marker. And so you really just like type in a name. And it's very easy to find all the results that you need. Got a little pull down here that has the instructions for navigating through it. And also because this was funded by federal funds, why that's not working. There's a little section down at the bottom up here that they're required to provide because it's federal funds that were used for that. Got some links at the top going to other websites. So that's it. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. So next we
Do you have a
have,
question
yeah,
over there?
oh, yes,
The issue you had with the points not being on the ends of the lines.
Yes.
Resolved by turning off your transformation to upload. So you go to the pro options and somewhere under coordinate system, there's a transformation tab. And then
okay.
you open that and there's a choice of none at the top.
Okay.
And that will,
I'll look into that because we saw that in another project, actually. We got some data from the city of Malala. They had done some surveys. They had done some surveying and they were supposed to be aligned with the storm lines and they were offset. So And when I talked to tech support, they were kind of not really sure, and like I didn't get that response until the next day. They had to go look it up too. So, not very intuitive.
So you might have to turn it off on both,
Okay.
on all data sets for everything.
Yeah, and the thing is that like, all of my data was in the same projection system. We use, state plane, NAT 83 HARN, like everybody else in this area except for the state. That's weird. So, and it's just odd because I never had this problem in ArcMap, but it seems like whenever there's a base map, and then when you go in ArcGIS online, it's trying to take your data and put it to theirs. And it just is weird sometimes, and it's not consistent, which is frustrating.
Yeah, so in ArcMap, when you drop in new data, it says something about transformation. We always just
Right.
know.
Yeah,
Like Pro doesn't give you that option, so you have to go in and turn the transformation off.
okay, that's good to know. Thanks. Anything else? Okay, Eric, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Up next is Eric McAvoy from Polk County, talking about Experience Builder.
Let's see if I can make this phone do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, all right, it's working. Okay. I'm Eric McAvoy. I'm the GIS manager at Polk County. This is Elena Bailey. She's our new GIS tech. There we go. She's very new. She's been with us for a little more than a month now, and I'm forcing her to do a few slides on this presentation. So, too bad. Typically what I do when I make presentations is I harp on and on about how, Experience Builder is a thing that's happening, or how ArcPro is a thing that's happening, and you should just do it. And this is not much different than that. Better prepare your data for the Experience Builder, or don't. So, brief review of the recent events. The Web App Builder is retired along with the JS3 API. Your apps will still work for now. Custom widgets are still there on the ESRI community, and the Web App Builder is no longer available on ArcGIS Online. What I mean by they still work for now is Chrome, Edge, Windows, anybody, Safari can introduce a update within their systems that will break stuff for us. And ESRI won't be going through and fixing that anymore. We're done. It's a product that was extremely successful, and now they don't want to do it anymore. That's understandable. I wouldn't want to do it either. And now also we have Enterprise 11.3 and our Pro 3.3 out. There's tons of little things that have been added to data management and updates that have made to the home sites and all sorts of stuff in the portal that make that do make your life easier for managing data for the Experience Builder. And yeah, okay. The Experience Builder is ready. I hear this all the time. It's not ready. Yes, it is ready. You just aren't ready for it. Wouldn't it be helpful if some local GIS folks made a presentation to help you get ready? And then the corporate disclaimer that the Experience Builder is a different product than the Web App Builder. It works differently, it looks differently, it smells different, it walks different, it does everything different. And you know that there is no direct path for migration from the Web App Builder to the Experience Builder. Everybody said it. Everybody has looked at it and looked at the Experience Builder team and been like, but why, guys? Why couldn't you give us a tool that would make our lives better? And they
Don't care.
characteristically are very coldly will tell you, well, you just have to do it again. And fine.
But you know that changes later this year.
Does it actually change though, John?
I'll discuss it in my session.
I really would like to do that.
There is what's, can't remember what we've changed the name to, but there's basically a web app builder mode.
That's what I heard, but is it gonna convert apps?
I'll hold off until.
Keep everyone in suspense.
Yep. All right, so where do we start? Well, the Experience Builder does seem to be a pretty significant change in attitude about web apps. But the web apps are not disposable. And yeah, I'm aware that that's counterindicated by there's no conversion. And also that we've been instructed to dispose of our web app builder apps. They are not disposable. And I don't know if any of you guys remember early on in the web app builder days of, hey, I can't get to any of my pop-ups anymore. And the tech support solution was, well, just go in and rebuild your entire application and it'll work again. That is no longer the line that they're sticking to. Like the web apps have become a lot more robust, a lot more resilient to weird changes. Hell, there's a trash can on ArcGIS Online now. So if you delete something, you can go back and undelete it. I mean, that's pretty novel.
Just for 2 weeks.
Yeah, but that's still 2 weeks more than we had before. In fact, it's a positive number as opposed to just losing stuff randomly. So that's great. Web apps are how normal people interact with GIS. And they're everywhere. And they're the foldable template ones are the ones that are everywhere. The fastest, easiest ones for anyone to deploy at any given time. And people expect to see them. And if you look at the CAL FIRE website for big wildfires in California, it's a foldable web app builder app. If you look at basically anything that was rolled out for like the Washington Post for election 2020, it was a foldable app. It was all the same thing, and people got used to it, and now they see it and they look at it and like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. And now, because we expect to see maps and we expect to see data everywhere, they've given us a tool to do that, and it's the Experience Builder. And yes, I complained a lot about it for a long time because it didn't make any sense. And it was very opaque and confusing to use and hard to install. And there wasn't a lot of documentation for it. But those things have started to get a lot better. So where do we start? Oh, we're going to start with our data. I know it would be more fun to just launch into building an application, but you're really the problem. So let's start with your data. The first three things we want to look at the stuff that we're going to republish, look at the stuff that we're going to put out there. We want to determine, is our data still accurate? And do we need to make updates to geometry or the attributes or both? Confirm that your data is still relevant. I don't know how many of us still have like daily updating COVID values services still sitting out there, but probably don't need those now. And they're just chewing up server right resources. Regardless of if the data is accurate, do you need it? ArcGIS Online has really helpful hit counts for how often people are actually hitting your data. You can also embed Google Analytics to your web apps, and it will give you direct counts of how often people are turning something on, and when it is how often they're turning it on, how long they're leaving it on for, what other things they've done around it to make that stuff relevant to them. There's all kinds of pieces and parts in there you can get from it. And so it'll help you determine, do you need to display this? And you should ask yourself why. And if your answer to why is a dumb answer, especially just because we've always done it this way, you probably don't need it. But if you do need it, then keep working at it. Make it better. Update your attributes. Attribute names can be more than 10 characters now, guys. Do your aliases make sense? No. Like for us, TXLT, BRP27 makes sense to us, but doesn't to anybody else. So we go through, we clean up our attributes, make the titles make sense, we make the aliases make sense, and also we want to make our domain, our coded domain values make sense. They don't need to be abbreviated. It doesn't take up that much more space, and it makes your stuff useful to other people, which ultimately one would think is the goal. Maybe even add metadata. I know, metadata, nobody wants to do it, because it just takes time. But if you do it now, then you don't have to do it later. Or you can at least say that you tried to do it. And then, when you fall off of doing it later, then you'll have at least tried. And you'll feel better about it. And then symbology of pop-ups. Do you have a cluttered, sad-looking mess of a map by default? Probably. I do. A lot of municipal web apps do. This is the time to get really aggressive with figuring out the zoom level dependencies and reference scalings, how your labels format and layout. It seems like a lot of tinkering, and it is a lot of tinkering, and you may not actually you may not be able to mentally process the results that you're getting out of it. But when you take a look at the server logs and you see that your server is much happier and a lot less stuff is happening for no reason, it's really worth it. Especially with zoom level dependencies. I'll give you guys that one. It's if you don't have to draw something, don't draw it. It makes the browser happier. And when you're working on mobile in an area with a really shitty cell signal, it makes a big difference to people who are using it. So, try that. Avoid using the default color palettes. Everybody knows how the default color palettes are. Then they'll look at your map and they'll be like, oh, this is a generic map that anybody made. Well, you'd be amazed how nice your maps look by using color palettes. I like to take a book that I think has a nice picture or a nice graphic design on the front, and then find a JPEG of it and use the little eyedropper thing to get all the values out of it, make that into a color palette. That works out pretty well, and it's an easy one to get people to do, especially if you're working with other departments within your organization. You can be like, hey guys, you can make it whatever colors you want. Why don't you pick something? And pick like the newest person they have, grab them and say, hey, you find me a book, and then you hand it to the GIS guys. But you'll get stuff out of it. And then reevaluate the order in which your layers are drawn. This didn't used to be as critical as it's become, but in this latest update of stuff, pop-ups respect the draw order of the maps, not the response order of the server. So it's not just semi-random anymore what order your pop-ups show up in. Now they show up in the order which you're drawing. So if you have a whole bunch of stuff with a bunch of different just outlines that are stacked on top of each other, and it doesn't really look at what the appearance of it doesn't matter, but the pop-ups are the things that matter. You can put them in an order now, and it will respect that order. Talk about pop-ups.
So my job for the last month has been reconfiguring all of our pop-ups for our public map. So the goal for that is user readability. People don't need to see the object when they click on an object. They just need to see what they need to see. So this is an example from our precincts layer. People can click on their precincts, they can see all of their representatives and then get links to their representatives' websites. And this is really great because it's this pop-up formatting that I'm doing in ArcPro transfers over to Experience Builder and it's built from there. So some of the things that have been really useful to me, the empty function I've been using a lot. It checks for null values. So you can use it to only display fields that are not null. This is a park pop-up where when you click on the park, it will only show the amenities that are available. It won't just show a bunch of null values like a table would. And I've used it to simplify tables to display tables, but only show fields where there are no non-null values. It skips the ones that have null values. Referencing expressions. This has been really helpful. You can make expressions and then reference them when you actually make your pop-up expression. This is really great for debugging. You can figure out what's happening really easily, isolates your code. And then this way you can avoid repeating the same code block if you need to reference it more than once. And HTML tags in Arcade for visual purposes. Again, we're trying to give the end user something that's readable and easy for them to look at. So I've been using bolding text, all the easy, simple HTML tags, but they're super, super useful for creating a really, really visually pleasing pop-up.
And is the information easily found within the documentation?
No, this is really poorly documented. Yeah, so. And then hyperlinks, I can create hyperlinks within ArcPro that then are transferred when you enter Experience Builder. This is a bit of an iffy one because you do have to create, by the way, I've figured out how to do it. You have to create a new field that has what's shown at the bottom there as the field and then is referenced in an Arcade pop-up. So it does require a lot of extra power. You have to have a whole extra field for every single hyperlink that you want. This may be something that's better configured once you're in Experience Builder, but the ability to do this, the ability for people to click on a link directly is really wonderful.
And then you can configure that directly through the pop-up builders within the web map viewer. But we're trying to save ourselves work in the web map viewer, so this is working out pretty well. All right. So, got pop-ups, we've got all of our restructuring. So we have to remember that our old web app builder maps and services were designed with ArcMap in mind. And ArcMap is dead. It's dead, Lesley.
I know.
ArcMap is dead.
I know. Yeah. So just a little bit of background. Was it 2021 you presented at the Northwest ESRI conference?
No, it's 2019.
No, it was during the pandemic because it was virtual.
I don't even remember.
I think it was
I did
2021.
a couple of years before too.
And Eric was talking about Experience Builder and not Experience Builder, but ArcPro. And like went on this diatribe about how ArcMap is dead, get over yourself, stop stalling, stop, hanging on to a dead technology. And like, it really hit me here because it was very true. And like, I hadn't been ready to move on yet. And so, but that is what motivated me. So thank you. Keep repeating that message because other people still need to hear it.
It's dead. ArcMap is dead.
Except for when you have trouble joining tables sometimes.
Not until March 1st, 2026.
There you go.
It's truly dead.
It's on special support. There's a tube. Anyway, so the web app builder maps in the 3x API were in what they called the Map Viewer Classic. Now it's called the Map Viewer Classic. And new Map Viewer, which is now just called Map Viewer, for simplicity's sake, it's not confusing at all. It's not confusing at all. It is entirely different from how it all was structured before. Getting in there, fumbling around and finding where the things that were in Map Viewer Classic are in Map Viewer. It takes time, but it's worth it because it is a much better web map designer tool. And so your new services should be designed to take advantage of ArcPro and Portal and the new Map Viewer and Experience Builder. You don't have to make groups of layers, like weird, everything that belongs to the assessor doesn't have to be viticulture area and, I don't know, farm forest zone and all this. You can actually make groups stand alone off to the side and do it after the fact. not within the service itself. You can format your pop-ups before publishing, which, yeah, I know you could do it in ArcMap, but it didn't always do what you wanted it to do. That being said, it also doesn't always do what you want it to do in ArcPro, but it's pretty good. And then retire the services that you aren't using. Your server will thank you for it. Your system admins will thank you for it in the long run. And then build a new web map. It's different. It's not new, but it's different. And the 4X API, the new web map viewer is required for all the modern ESRI stuff. If you just load the old map into the new viewer, it will work. And that's exactly what it will do. It will work, but you won't gain anything from it. If you actually put your eyes on each layer as you add them in, you can adjust and clean, make things make sense. You can figure out why something isn't drawing correctly or why something is labeled with characters that you've never seen before. You open a portal to an unknown dimension or something. Go through, clean your stuff up, and you'll have a nicer experience. An acknowledgement of what is still missing. Print was the #1 thing on this before, now it's back, now it's here, so we're happy with printing. The developer community for the Experience Builder is not nearly as robust as it was. Robert Shitlin has retired. Robert Shitlin built amazing widgets for Flex and for Web App Builder and the other thing that was before Flex, which I can't remember its name anymore. He built all this stuff. He's retired, and his great work is now no longer particularly useful in the new environment. And unfortunately, people have figured out that if they're building stuff, you might want to pay them for it. And it's very strange. But there are custom widgets out there for Experience Builder, but you got to talk to people about it, and they might want you to give them money. There's a new advanced search widget that we had a demo of a couple of weeks ago that replaces a lot of Robert's functionality from the Web App Builder. It's in a advanced beta, and they are going to want money for it. If you had used a save session widget before, there's one out there, but they're going to want money for it. So look through the ESRI community. There won't be links to how to get it because they're controlling it. And then there's this ESRI marketplace thing where they're trying to get stuff deliverable through. Haven't seen a lot of stuff out there yet, but everybody wants to put their stuff there that I've talked to. So I'm not really sure how that's working. There are few examples of the Experience Builder out there. So if you want to find, your application, a good example of what your application could become, it's been a little bit difficult to find really good ones out there. A lot of people there are a lot more applications out there than you think there are, and a lot of people have just rebuilt their Web App Builder applications in Experience Builder, and it doesn't look much different. They are there. If you take the time to look around, they're around. However, the adoption rate has been slow, partially because nobody can find examples. But if you don't make examples, then nobody else will be able to find examples, and the adoption rate will continue to be slow. So, get in there, screw around with it. It is maddeningly opaque at first, but you spend some time, screw around in it, watch a couple of the videos that are out there on what's the thing? YouTube. You watch the videos, you get a little bit better handle on it, and it does get a lot easier to work with. It starts to make sense internally, like make sense with itself, which was a problem at first. So there you go. There's also no simple conversion, unless of course there is, John.
So it's a conversion. I don't know that I would say it's simple, but
Okay. Prepare to repeat your work. Maybe more than one time. Who knows? or don't do any of these things. That one of the things that I've been very surprised about and really impressed with is you can just take that old that web map classic map, plop it into the new map or the new map viewer, save it, and then point the experience builder at it in the simplest format possible. And it does work. It might be ugly, it might be borderline unusable, but it does work. It does get out there. And so if everything just stops working on Friday because Chrome decides to push out version 128 and it is deprecated Dojo and jQuery for some reason, then you have an option, you have a way to move forward. Yeah. That's all I got. Anybody got questions? Yes.
What's the advantage of doing the pop-up and pro instead of map viewer?
The advantage of doing pop-up and pro is if you have multiple applications eating the same service, that pop-up will be respected across the various applications, across the various web apps, or web maps, web apps, whatever. You won't have to go in and configure it each time you're putting it on a new map.
So are you saying when you share that service from ArcGIS Pro, it'll keep pop-up stuff? Really?
Yeah. And it used to do, it did do that in ArcMap, sort of,
Sort of,
but not very well.
okay.
Now it actually does, and it does it real good, except for when it doesn't. But you'll figure out that it doesn't really fast when it doesn't.
So what's going on behind the scenes is that the pop-up definition, when you publish it from Pro, that service is embedded in the service file, basically. So any app or any web app that you build that touches that services sees the pop-up configuration and uses it. Versus building pop-ups inside Web App Builder or Experience Builder, that definition is stored in the Experience Builder app rather than getting it right off the service.
And quick question, John. So I know that, so because the pop-up definition is being stored in file in the service definition, and there's the client-side query evaluation in the Experience Builder, does it also pull the pop-up definition to the client side when you turn that thing on?
I think so. It does it for, I have to double check, but it does it for pop-ups. It also does it for, gosh, what's the other thing? Well, symbolic stuff, but there's a bunch of things that it pulls, reads out of the service rather than defaulting if you just point at the raw layer. So there's a number of things that it learns from Pro.
Cool. Okay. Anybody else got any?
Yeah, hi, Eric. Can you hear me at all? It's David. Yeah, hi. Sorry, I can't find the thing on Zoom to raise your hand or whatever you do, but hopefully you can see me. Yeah, can I just say something? By the way, most of what I say is basically what Eric told me or John told me, so but with my own experience, you know. But there's a couple of reasons really for moving forward with any technology like this, you know, from ArcGIS Pro to ArcMap, from Web App Builder to Experience Builder. And you know, one is you're forced, you know, and that's kind of the situation we're in right now with Web App Builder, is that the technology is officially retired and in, you know, the case of ArcGIS Online, no longer available. But then the other issue is, and ArcMap, of course, is still available for another couple of years. Now, you know, they say it's the end, but last time I heard a survey was just 2 or 3 months ago of how many people have made the switch. And, you know, it had gone from something like 45% in 2020, 21, when, you know, people like me, Randy Bonds and others were asking all the time. And then it's now at about 65. Well, that's still staggering when you think about it. You know, I mean, it should be at 80 or 90 by now, but it's not. So who knows what's going to happen then. But the other reason is all of the great capabilities that you have available to you. And that's an opportunity, as John has said before, you know, with respect to ArcGIS Pro SDK stuff, for example, making add-ins. Don't just simply repeat, as Eric said, don't just simply repeat what you've done, unless you just need to get it out really quickly, of course. But take the chance to rethink your processes, your workflows, and all that sort of thing, because there are so many more options now than there used to be. And so really take the time to explore what it is you need to get done, then think of the most appropriate solution for that, whether it be an experience builder application, you know, an ArcGIS Pro add-in or whatever, you know, one of those, what do you call them, the express map things, you know, whatever they are. But the other thing I was going to say, though, and back to sort of why you're somewhat forced, back in 2019, when Experience Builder first sort of came out and things were sort of changing, I was teaching a web app builder widget workshop, and all of a sudden, the day before my workshop was due to start, my service, my little demo widget was selecting features in the 3x SDK, their JavaScript, wouldn't work. It just simply didn't work. And I was using Eric's data for parcels. And afterwards, I just had to revert to an older version of Web App Builder, and I was fine. And afterwards, I talked to him and I said, well, why, you know, this didn't work? It was quite scary, you know. And it turned out he had the answer, and the answer was that he had republished his service in ArcGIS Pro instead of ArcMap, and all of a sudden the two things wouldn't communicate properly. And so just as a bit of background, ArcGIS Online and Portal and what have you is just a repository of text files. That's really what it is, with functionality to turn those text file configuration files into something you see, whether it be a map, a story map, you know, an experience build application, whatever. And those configuration files, their format have come on a long way. And the old technology, the 3x technology, doesn't necessarily understand that stuff anymore. And you might not get an error message, right? Things simply might not work. And you might not get any indication. So that in itself, and then of course you've got the obvious things that Eric mentioned, like security. But the fact that something doesn't work and you've got no indication is quite scary in a way, especially if it's really critical. And, you know, when it comes to visible things, it's easy to say, well, my thing's not showing up. My select features thing isn't selecting anymore. Fair enough. You know, you can see that, right? But what if it's something behind the scenes, you know, a calculation of some kind, something critical that's going on behind the scenes related to your workflow, and all of a sudden that isn't working properly, or it isn't giving the right answers because of this change? That's just outright disturbing and could get you into a lot of trouble, right? That's a very compelling reason right there why you need to get with the modern technology. And for, you know, for it still to be 65% or whatever, you know, using ArcMap, it suggests to me that, yes, there are some cases where people just can't make the move. But I hate to be blunt, people aren't taking this seriously enough. You know, you have to make the move. I mean, I'm sort of reinforcing really, you know, as in ranting, I guess, in the same way that Eric sort of does in a good way and very helpful. You gotta make a move, because things could be happening that you're not immediately aware of that could get you into a significant amount of trouble. So I hope that makes sense and isn't sort of too scary, but, you know, does that make sense? I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, thanks, David.
Oh, by the way, John, you beat me to it mentioning that web app builder mode thing. I read something recently. It was a message from Zhang Xia, the lady in charge, and it was either an email or an ArcGIS blog thing that mentioned the new name of it. And I was searching for it, and I can't find it now. But it came up as web app builder mode, and Eric alerted me to that. Back on the roadmap, it was April, I think, when it first appeared. And now it's going to be called something like express mode or something like that. But it's a mechanism anyway to make it easier, a bit more palatable, I guess, to go from web app builder to experience builder. And it's coming in the fall, supposedly. But there was something in an article recently that I can't find where it referenced the change of name and the fact that this was meant to make it easier for people to make the move from web app builder.
Nothing becomes real until the name of been changed at least 3 times.
Right, so maybe I'm wasting my energy worrying about what it's called now. Yeah, but I did see something about it. And
It's called express mode.
oh, there we go. Right. Okay. So I remember that.
Right. All right.
What will
Thanks,
it
David.
do? Sorry, what will it do, John, though? What is it? A kind of an importer?
John is scheduled to speak at
I
3
will
o'clock,
talk
so
about
stay
that
tuned.
later.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. All right. Cool.
Later
Thanks.
in the agenda.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Austin?
I was just curious if you can give a rough timeline for when we might be able to see the new Polk County map that's built on.
Well, you'll be able to see it in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And our internal applications are rolling into alpha-ish in a couple of weeks as we one of the things that we're struggling with is there are functionalities that we can't replace. The ability to make a traverse is chief among them, and so we will be hosting the new application in parallel with the old one in a tab window within the new application. It's just only there. Also, if you do find yourselves in that sort of a situation where you are heavily dependent on an old application that you cannot replicate the functionality for due to money or time or just lack of support for that particular process, I would highly suggest grabbing yourself a copy of the JS3 API and find yourself a safe little place to host that locally in your own environment, just in case something goes weird somewhere. And then you can at least play games with an offline machine to make things work as best as possible. But anyway, yeah. Anybody else? Hey, Dave.
Do you have any tips or insight about, with Experience Builder now, you have to build a mobile version of your app?
You have to make a what? I'm sorry.
Version?
Portable version? Mobile. Oh, mobile. So you don't have to make a mobile version, but if you don't, it will look dumb.
Yes.
Basically what we've done, or what I've been doing as I've tested this, is I get the worst old phone that I can get from our IT folks, and I configure it to work on that phone. The one with the worst resolution, I'm sure yours is better than the one we've got, Dave. Find the one with the worst resolution and the weirdest aspect ratio. That's pretty important. Phones do not conform to a set aspect ratio, and especially if you look at like iPhone from the 5 and 6-ish range, they were weirder and more square, and you didn't realize it until you got a new one and you compare them and you're like, configure your applications to work on something weird like that, and then when it gets stretched out a little bit, it's better than trying to compress it. The other thing that I've done screwing around with it is we have a bunch of old 7-inch tablets sitting around all over the place, and we use them for kiosk mode type stuff. Configuring things in that kiosk mode sized tablet is another thing that we've tested, and that does help. It doesn't translate well to iPad. 7-inch tablet to iPad size aspect ratio, totally different, gets real weird, but yeah.
Can I just say on that note, the reason, the big justification for Experience Builder was that people said, we want the mobile capability with Web App Builder. And of course, Web App Builder on a mobile device is just, a smaller desktop website basically, and that's it. And so so that was a big impetus for making it, that they say, and it must have been so, I feel so sorry for Zhang Shah, the lady in charge, because she got so much flack at the beginning, probably from people like Eric, like, well, what's this? Why do we have to make a switch? And she said, well, you wanted mobile, this is what we had to do, and that mobile emphasis is going to be a big thing coming up. Again, in one of these articles that I read, there is a ton more coming, supposedly, or a big emphasis anyway on supporting mobile development, so, and it is tremendously important, and it does simplify it enormously. So if you are making a website for desktop and you're not thinking about mobile, at least do the basic things, because you can guarantee in this day and age, a lot of people will try to open your site on some sort of device, so at least do the basics.
That being said, also develop it for desktop, don't just develop it for mobile. That's also really important for people. Anyway, yeah, so I've got, anything else?
Yeah, I got a question. So since you're gonna be putting your new site in beta, we were talking about the enhanced search widget, which is not available in Experience Builder. So how are you handling that in your new site? Because like we use that for the Yamhill County site, it's got the graphical search and the text search in one, and now you can't do that.
So there's two parts to it. One is what we did talk to this developer out of Arizona that's standing up a new custom widget that does the same sort of things. It looks a little different, it acts a little different, but it does the same basic stuff. They wanted people to test it. I told them we would be happy to test it, and then once it goes to release, we will have to pay to license it.
Do you know what the licensing is?
I have no idea. So I am a little
That
hesitant about
scares
that.
me.
The other side is though that the query widget has graphic component and multiple input component to it. It's definitely not as intuitive, but it does work. And so the documentation for the query widget is good. As long as you look at the correct version of it. Look at the one that's for Web App Builder 1.14, 1.15. If you look at the previous one, it doesn't make any sense because none of it is the same anymore. But the graphic component is there. The multi-field stuff is there, but it's just a lot of configuration to get it to that point. And to be fair, Robert's widget was also a lot of configuration to get it to that point, and it took a really long time to get it as locked down as it is. So it's there, but
just a quick word, if I can, just the last thing about customization. When Experience Builder first came out, Eric, I remember you saying, get into developing things because Robert's going to retire and there's an opportunity there. But, Chris Marsh, any of you know Chris, is an Olympia Solutions engineer there, and for ESRI, and he suggested that maybe developing custom widgets for Experience Builder is really the domain of the web developer rather than the GIS analyst person dabbling, and that was really who I was targeting with my web app builder workshops that I've taught in the past. And for a long time I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, maybe this is too tricky. I've shown slides before to this group where I've shown the technology that's involved, and it is definitely way, way more challenging. But the more I think about it, and I'm not there yet, but the more I think about it, the more I think, no, I think, I could do a workshop on this. It will be a longer workshop. It won't just be a day. It'll be 2 or 3 days, something like that. And I've asked, or I've raised this possibility and discussed this at various presentations and meetings in the last year or two. And there is definite interest from, people I would consider, serious analysts rather than developers, and so if you're interested in wanting to learn this stuff from sort of going from essentially zero, do let me know. And I'm not saying this as a sales pitch. It's just that there's a void there. I mean, no one's teaching this stuff, and you're kind of on your own. But the more I look at it and the more I play with it, and I need to go a lot further yet, the more I think, yeah, I could do this. I could get people moving, in pretty basic ways. So if it is something you're interested in, let me know, or let anyone else, who can do this know, because I think it is doable.
on time. If there's any last questions, go ahead. Otherwise, we can take a break. Come back at 2:25.
All right.
And then we'll be hearing from the city of Salem.
Question, but I think I opened your geoportal.
A lot of Bobs.
Small ones were good.
Sort of like the battery pack thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was confused.
So we drove my
Like,
car.
why you have.
Good. Just got. Because we tried all the cool. Yes. The kids are big enough now. Yes. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's weird.
I want to sit.
I gotta.
Nice.
Yeah.
And now, do you live in the house or you here? Oh, you. Okay. Nice. Yeah. We have a, for 127 that required a emergency. Okay. Enterprise? Wow. That's gonna happen more. That will be, city house for about a year and a half, so. Yeah. Yeah.
Almost services.
Yeah. I think the public one is going to be, except for trying to.
Mine is just a map error.
Yeah. Yeah. The public one, the public one's still going to be in a configured application. I've been screwing around. PPC Maps XD.
Well, I had David build the version.
Yeah.
Now I can match their stuff. You can connect.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Geocarbon data.
I've never done it. I know about it. Did a lot.
Yeah. I'm curious what the machine is like. 'Cause
I've done X-ray diffraction, I've done proton induced X-ray emission.
Yeah.
Worked with those machines, but I've not actually done any carbon 14 data.
Yeah, they'll be no longer.
after they dated it, like
Well, that explains that then.
like this artifact.
So they, oh, I see.
But it was like
They
they
pull it up
accidentally.
and then they dated it?
No, they dated it. They were like, we weren't supposed to do this.
Oh.
Exactly identical, and it doesn't.
Academic or in a, what kind of setting?
Work.
Private.
Hey, you still want rocks?
Yes, I do.
It's more like, no,
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm like.
and you didn't notice.
You know, you're doing that. I don't think.
And then, you know,
Yeah.
I just wasn't aware of the potential.
There's so many cool techniques there.
ArcGIS online.
Dendrocanal.
But the new map.
Chris was saying that he knows
Um,
how to
and,
do that.
you know, like, oh, there's an Like, I was, and I could join it there either. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a credit, so, like, I don't want
Yeah,
to
like they're just
credit on.
probably when there were no trees.
I don't know. I don't know what period you might be talking about. I'm also way rusty. Topic of conversation. Prehistory.
I was fine now.
And Brian, like when you go, when you.
Am I supposed to know?
No, I just have
Nobody handed it to me. Nobody handed me anything on that.
Yeah.
Last I heard, like this last week, they've been mostly like Kevin and. So there's still something that
After I'm done, I can.
I think it has to do with.
It's like, like Arc
But
map.
I haven't heard all this and he started, so it's not like you're talking directly.
The event loader, the tool good loader. event.
Yeah,
It'll,
I
it'll match.
find it.
We tried to.
Yeah.
initially, I was like,
I'm kind of at the time. Oh, really?
For working with parent fields at any time.
Yeah.
All help.
Well, yeah, regarding running, I got
Oh, okay.
7 and 3/4 miles.
I just run it on.
I kind of burnt out. I was like, I guess it was like, well, I was doing it consistently. It started too much and I. Yeah.
Can't burn out.
Yeah, start.
I'm just gonna.
Zombies
I
run,
haven't practiced.
like-
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Five for Able Township.
Listen to lunch and then I said, okay.
Yeah, so every once in a while, but the whole story is like, you go to the hospital to get a case. So where it's like, you play, like they have like their version of Dungeons and Dragons, type things they talk about. It's really hard to be like, I don't wanna go running, but I'm like, I wanna go to the hospital, I wanna find out, like, there was a kid on a motorbike, like, where's their parents?
Yeah, like people find a lot of stuff like that. Like, we've got like a Hobbit, like walking.
Yeah, yeah.
Now. Like,
I'm I was loyal to Zombies Run because they like started it all and it's like, and they have like 5K, 10K.
I'm limiting myself to.
They did one that was like Jurassic Park themed. They did another which was like you're a lad in the UK.
But anyway.
Like you can run, you can, I mean, it's for running, but you can walk, you can row, you can bike,
Oh.
like if you don't do the full, or if you do the full mission, you keep running, they'll just have a radio post, and they're like, remember this old song back in the day, and it's your music that you're listening to, so it's like, I don't know, it's Shakira's that old song you're talking about, so it's hard to not find, it's direct on it.
Radio filter over it.
No, that'd be cool, yeah. So like, that's how I got into running, with Zombies Run, and I never used to run. That's my, like, putting it into everyone, whenever they're like, I want to start running, I'm like, zombies.
Comes up, December.
Huh?
That I had at the.
Steps was.
Being competitive with it.
Look at it.
I was on the web.
Be like, no, I got a visa.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I saw the others, was it Condy? Oh, my God, I love that. My favorite song, but it's real,
And that's all I do is like, if it's like, hey, you only have to walk 20 minutes to meet your calorie count, I'm like, all right, I can do that.
And negotiating with, hospitals through a series of.
Yeah, I have, the.
It has, like, it's got a, It's got a three-phase
has
motor.
three options, and you can set like, oh, I want to do a half marathon.
Oh,
And then the super
You know,
yeah, 11 to 12 weeks, and then it'd be like, okay, today, what you have scheduled is like interval runs. Yeah, it's really cool. And then the next day or the next time, you select which days out of the week you're gonna work out. And then, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. It just started increasing too much. In fact, like, it jumped from like 4 miles to 7.34 or 7.75 miles.
That's
And I
almost
was
double
like,
your miles.
like, this is insane. I get it. I put in like a half marathon, but like it's been 10 weeks and now we're at 7. That was huge.
That still sounds pretty cool.
You can join our team that's gonna run a relay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So running, we're thinking we're gonna get a whole.
I'm gonna start it back up if I have a reason to.
And a pallet jack, because it's all.
That's why you gotta keep size.
No, it's not 101. Okay. I was like, I'm not running.
There's no shoulder.
There's no shoulder. It's cave to cave, which
Oh,
is.
Cape to Cape.
You know it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of Cape to Cape and I've heard of Hood Coast.
No, the last 2 years we've had the big, no, they're all like, you're crazy, but also the last 2 years we've had the expense.
Oh, like one overnight.
I've heard of Hood to Coast, but like that's.
We're working on it.
Yeah, that's too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I guess, so like
So
you're,
we're thinking cave to cave, because like you just need 5 people.
Yeah.
not, you're not talking about the top, the people, not the
No?
drive.
What if you need?
That's good to know. And that's kind of the kind of thing that you.
Like, I hope.
If it's 5 people, it's just, there's 5 lights, so.
But it's like.
Okay,
There are other.
And they have a shuttle bus.
Again, so it just comes in like 2 seconds.
Oh, no.
And one of the,
Every 20 seconds.
okay,
Go.
it's a reasonable enough time to get trained.
Yeah. Like, if we're actually gonna do it, we've got
What
time
would the
to
length,
train.
what would the length of the legs be? If it was
It ain't
like-
long as the 6 miles, right?
I think the elevation.
Okay.
Good, how you doing? The mental process. Survey one. Building. Printer.
Yeah, it's easy, moderate, slightly difficult, moderate, difficult, extremely difficult. You had it.
Fun.
I don't have it.
Got a 3D.
There was like a screenshot where they like surveyed people, and it was like 99% of people did one like extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Huh. You didn't alter that, they could.
Maybe that's part of the fun. It's not like now fun, but like in a year from now, it's for fun.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that's fun. It's not hooded,
Michael?
That's a different name, right?
Yeah, but it finishes at like the same time.
Right now.
Yeah, might be it. Yeah, that kind of time. Start. Then I know the distance like that, I could put that in my watch. Gradually pick up that, which is what that watch does, which is cool.
Is it like the Forerunner?
Yeah, I did the book.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Yeah.
It's all fancy bells and whistles. Mine's like 4 years old, so it doesn't have as many.
I don't
fancy, like, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all the-
Yeah, mine's about that same.
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years. Yeah.
Anyone else going to the Northwest Conference next month? Cool. Yeah, I haven't been to a conference since it was here in Salem. What year was that? What year was that, Ken?
2017, I think.
16 or 17? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't travel very far for conferences, so when I heard it was in Seaside, I was like, yeah. You gonna be there, John?
Got everything open.
I'm actually on vacation.
Oh.
I made my vacation plans long before the schedule.
Gotcha, that might not be it.
Good time.
Anything to.
Okay, well, should we go ahead and get started? You guys ready? Okay, well, welcome, two presentations by the city of Salem. And first up is Vijai.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vijai Prammagnaanam, GIS programmer with City of Salem. I'm part of an admin team that manages, maintains, and administers GIS software and services for the city. So today I'm going to present to you about a data visualization option for administering ArcGIS Enterprise. So just to get a pulse, how many of you are familiar with administering ArcGIS Enterprise? Okay, quite a few. I'm expecting a similar split in the virtual audience as well. So I'm not going to go deeper into any of the administration concepts. It's going to be an overview. So for those whose role is not into administering enterprise, stay with me. I'm not going to go into the details. So for administering ArcGIS Enterprise, there are lots of options. There are tons of tools available. They are focused for a purpose, and some are built in, like portal admin or server manager or logs. There are so many options that gives an administrator a pulse of what's happening behind the scenes, or how well is your system functioning. In City of Salem, we have 8 servers that run together to make ArcGIS Enterprise available to everyone. So we need to look at all those servers in different locations. ESRI also has a separate software that helps with administering ArcGIS Enterprise. That's called ArcGIS Monitor. It's a separate purchase. It's not a built-in option, but it has robust, performance metrics that you can capture, and also you can monitor the health and usage statistics from your enterprise. The third option is what we are playing with now. We do have access to Microsoft Business Intelligence. So PowerBI, we are exploring how we can incorporate AI into GIS. So we are slowly building our use of Microsoft technology. And first step was to see, maybe how can we visualize the administration of ArcGIS Enterprise. So this may not be just for administrators. So think of it as maybe how can we share this visualization with a wider audience, or maybe your management team, or a SharePoint item that you want to share with your folks on, how is what's in ArcGIS Enterprise, just to give them an overview, good governance. So let's go into a demo. I took the data from ArcGIS Enterprise and I connected it to PowerBI. We switch to So after reading the data from ArcGIS Enterprise, I've created a report. There are many sections. I'm going to start with the top left, where you can see how much is the storage each item is taking. So you can monitor who is taking the maximum use, And you can even, drill deeper into like, what is that item? And there are hyperlinks you can get back to. And then your whole item, when was certain items created? Is it consistently being used? Are there any anomalies? Sudden spike in the activity. You can go, drill down to see each quarter how many content has been created, and group them by owners. Here I chose to display built-in owners versus other. Other is a group of all Active Directory users, so basically all end users. And so this is another way to look at your data. And the bottom left, this is of importance. Our ArcGIS Enterprise is meant for internal use. So how are your items being shared? That it helps to know. We don't want to see data that's shared with the public. There's a separate place for that. We use ArcGIS Online for public sharing. So this is a concern. I have one content that's shared public. That's shared with public. I'll get to that later. The next widget here, you see a breakdown of your content by type. How many dashboards do you have within your enterprise, or types of services? And if you and this is very interactive. When I click on one, every widget kind of responds to that selection. So you can even go down. Sorry, wrong one. So this is where all the storage, your items, we have it in different sites. Each site has multiple servers. So this tells me, okay, where the content is coming from. And, top 7 owners, who owns the content. If I wanted to click on one, as you see, it reflects all other types. So next one, you can also get hits. How popular your content is, or this is a graph of top 7 view counts and who owns them. And you can even drill down into seeing, what are all those items. Get my mouse and scroll to see, where those, number of hits are. And you can even go into, seeing everything, like all the content within your enterprise, how heavily or how often that's being utilized. There's a Q&A section. So in PowerBI, there's an option to utilize Copilot. That's the AI tool that Microsoft provides. But unfortunately, because we are on government cloud, that tool is not yet available for government cloud. So this is the next best option of utilizing Q&A. Power BI, it reads your data and it comes up with smart statistics, and you can even ask questions. These are all the built-in questions that it generated. And remember the one content that was shared with public. I can ask which item has share level to public. So it tells me, okay, that's the item, and I can even ask, show me the URL, and questions like, what item has maximum number of views or view counts? And it tells me that's the Kaiser Stormwater utility, and that's the view count. So this is just a possibility. Once you connect your Copilot, you can monitor, you can have trends, and so this could be something like I mentioned. There's a place for this. This is for if you want to get an overview or a dashboard of where things are, and a highly interactive way to share it with your end user. This is an option. So just wanted to present this to the group. Are there any questions? Yes, Devin.
How did you get the data into it, or is it connected live?
Yeah, for those who couldn't hear, the question was, how do you get the data? Is it connected? So the answer is, there's a report within Enterprise that you can run that spits out an Excel, like a CSV file of all your items. And I grabbed that Excel and I imported it. It's static right now, but it can be made dynamic using Power Automate tools. You can grab that file automatically and then use that to drive your Intel. And there are some behind the scenes transformations that are happening. For example, the timestamp in the default timestamp that comes out of Enterprise is not usable natively. So that needs to be transformed. So there are some behind the scenes work that's happening. And all that work can be automated quite easily. So we could have this dashboard maybe run every overnight so that you get the latest and greatest statistics. Yes, Michael.
How is one item shared publicly if we're not?
How is one item shared publicly? So we typically restrict the ability to share with public to only a select group. So it might have been a member of that group might have accidentally shared that. I haven't investigated that item yet, whether is it really needed to be shared with public or it was that by an accident.
It was by accident. I'm fixing it right now.
So that's the thing with trust, right? Even though ArcGIS Enterprise, you can control who does what. We just for convenience, we sometimes over grant permissions for some select groups, and this might happen. But lesson learned, we will. This is something to keep track of, right? So this is something that there's tons and tons of items behind ArcGIS Enterprise. So as an administrator, this might give an easy way to look at what's happening and then identify your problem and fix it. So this is another tool.
Like we could look into why Kaiser Stormwater is our busiest.
Yes, Nathan.
Would you ever use Power BI to do more like performance analysis, like what you're talking about on the servers and response times and stuff like that, or would that be more some of the other tools that you were showing in your slides earlier?
Yes, so for performance metrics, like I mentioned, ArcGIS Monitor is an option. It has tools to monitor real time what's happening with your ArcGIS enterprise. I've also tested using Apache JMeter. That's a load stress testing software. You can simulate, what if like 1,000 users are coming in and trying to break the system, and you can see how well your system is performing under stress. Power BI, I wouldn't use Power BI for stress testing, but maybe grab the results of the stress test and then use it to showcase. That might be what I can see using Power BI for.
I guess another, so as opposed to real time or stress testing, actually looking at history, what are our response times? Where have we seen degradation over time? And are we doing good? Are we doing bad? Just kind of summarizing how things have been going, I guess, would be another.
Yeah, certainly. Like I mentioned before, there are tons of tools available for a specific purpose. But if the goal is to look at, response time history, that can be a separate tool. And then the results can be fed to Power BI for data visualization. Online questions?
Desiree, do we have any questions in the chat? Okay. All right. Thank you. And we have another presentation from Salem queuing up now.
I have host disabled participant screen sharing due to.
Are you still sharing?
Not sure.
Are you logged in separately? I can just make you host.
Stop share up there.
Oh, yeah.
She has logged in.
I am logged in separately and I don't have access to it.
Carolina lot.
Ayala? Like if I came from Camelot, it'd be like Carolina Ayala lot. Dumb joke. My friend used to tell me all the time. Just the screen then? Yeah. Okay, I'm Carolyn Ayala.
Michael Medina.
And we're going to talk about how we integrated Cityworks and Fieldmaps for our crews using URLs.
We're both GIS analysts for the city of Salem, and we don't rehearse this part, but does anyone here use Cityworks? Thinking about using Cityworks?
Other than people from the city of Salem.
Also, Cityworks is an asset management system, and it's a whole other application. And there were some concerns with our field workers that they're used to their Fieldmaps workflows, and we came up with a way to integrate Fieldmaps with Cityworks. So that's what this is about.
So we had different business needs. The big one just being able to integrate Cityworks with our legacy processes. So in your case.
Yeah, so in my case, I am the park analyst. And back in 2021, we had this ice storm that you will probably remember, where we stood up quickly stood up a version of Workforce and then Survey 123 to host our work orders. And we had like 4,000 or 5,000 of them. We created the typical workflow where you open a field map, you tap on a pop-up, it opens Survey 123, where you can then fill out the survey. And then last year, about a year ago, we started to switch to Cityworks as our asset management system. The old asset management system didn't have a mobile solution, which is why we did Survey 123 and Fieldmaps. When we were rolling out Cityworks, like with 5,000 work orders, like 2,000 of them still open, we decided it was just too big of an ask to have like IT import everything and sort through it, as well as the field workers to like learn a whole new system all at once. So we came up with the idea of transitioning from Survey 123 to Cityworks in the same field map.
For our stormwater quality inspectors, they were hesitant to transition over to Cityworks, but we're told they needed to do so by July 1st. One of the big issues is they wanted to keep their same workflow. So for them, I can actually show their old map. They had just a map on ArcGIS online. The green dots are where they inspected for the fiscal year. And these blue and red dots were the assets themselves. So they would just click the asset and they had a link to record the specific, this link was to Survey 123 for the inspection. And so this workflow enabled them to just kind of, if they had a specific region for the year, it would be like South Salem. And depending where they were that day, or if they got sent somewhere, they could just inspect the asset right away, just pull their phone and look at their device to see if there's any inspectable assets in the area, which is something they really wanted to keep, did not want to switch to Cityworks, which enabled you to assign specific assets for the day. They didn't like that idea. They wanted the flexibility of just pulling up their phone and inspecting the asset right from there. And then for them, a big part was like visually being able to see what the team has already inspected. So specifically, they want to keep the green teardrops. So we had to try to find the way to, I clicked the wrong button. Keep the same workflow.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention with like 5,000 work orders in the system, there's no way that like urban forestry was going to be able to assign like a neighborhood for the day and get everything. So they wanted to be able to see, when I'm on this street doing this, is there anything else that I can do while I'm here? So that's where Fieldmaps comes in more useful than desktop version of Cityworks or the mobile version of Cityworks.
So how you're able to do this is through using EURLs, which stand for enterprise URLs. Cityworks actually provides a method for creating a feature layer based on the saved queries in the platform. So on the screen now are 3 for Stormwater, which is just based on the query you've made in Cityworks is saved, and you can then save it as a CSV, a shapefile, or a URL. And this is dynamic. It'll change whenever an inspection is opened or completed or closed.
And so the same thing with urban forestry, we have service requests, work orders, open and closed, and the old survey data and everything in one map. So they can look at all their work history from Fieldmaps, either or on desktop in a web map.
So I pulled up their 2024, their new map for inspections, and you can see we were able to keep those green raindrops. We've also added new ones for, again, closed or complete. You can click the teardrops are coming directly from Cityworks, but you're able to still configure the pop-ups as you wish. You can also filter everything. So while this query itself from Cityworks is just, I want complete inspections for this specific asset, on ArcGIS Online through the map, I filtered it by fiscal year and can set whatever filters and pop-up modifications. So it acts just like any other layer would from ArcGIS Online.
So, I mean, most of you know, you can create a link in the pop-up that takes you to Survey 123 or whatever app. In this case, we like buttons, so we didn't just do links. We made these pretty blue, red, and green, and yellow buttons. And they look like interface things in your mobile app, so they don't look like just blue text links. But anyway, these, there's both mobile and desktop screenshots here where you can open an asset in Respond, which Respond is the web version of Cityworks. So you can go straight to Cityworks from a desktop or field map. You can open a mobile work order on the Cityworks mobile app, which brings you to the mobile intake screen with the particular asset you tapped on selected already, so you're able to make a work order off of that asset. And then on the right, there are a couple buttons to open a service request on your phone or on the mobile app. Yeah.
One thing for these buttons in particular for Storm, the mobile inspection button from Cityworks is only for those water quality inspections they'll be doing. This could be like water quality facilities. But the opening asset and Respond, we actually added that to all our storm assets through our sewer assets actually through pop-ups in ArcGIS Pro, so that any sort of storm utility all or sewer utility all, like your presentation talked about, those pop-ups are configured that you can open the asset and Respond so that any user would have access to looking at the work history, service request history, inspection history, and it's across the board on any of our maps or dashboards. So we try to make things easier on us in the future, that everything is the same.
Okay, so essentially you have a lot of flexibility. You can open service requests, work orders, inspections on both the mobile app and the desktop. And so most of us know this ArcGIS survey 123:/ URL scheme to get into survey 123. The Cityworks one is just Cityworks plus the version you're on, : //. However, ESRI blocks that for security reasons, allegedly. But so to work around that, you just make an arcade expression where you split your URL into two separate parts and put it back together. Which has totally been approved by ESRI. No, and there are some, like, if anyone's using this, like, it doesn't look like it works, but it does work. So if you actually have questions about that, you can just ask us later. It's a little complicated.
Keep it on the down low.
I mean, I could go into details. It essentially, you put the URL in like it is, and it erases it and says it's not there. And then you open it on the phone and it works. But you don't think it's going to work because it doesn't look like it's there on the desktop. So you just have to believe. So that's it, essentially. And then this is just the buttons we make. At the bottom is the expression, you know, the link to the mobile inspection and the text that says create mobile inspection. And the 12 lines above that are just the button CSS. It's you choose your font color, font size, and all of that.
So using EURLs, we just integrated this asset management system with Fieldmaps for the ESRI inspections. For future improvements in the stormwater side, they have a lot of issues with Cityworks itself, so we'll be working on that. But in the field map side, they want to be able to have some little more back and forth between, like, if you open inspection using that EURL, can we point back to Cityworks and open it directly from the EURL? So just trying to make it easier for them to bounce back and forth between these two systems for the time being. Any questions?
Can you pass asset values from those links to Cityworks? like the asset type for an ID or something?
Yes, I mean, typically what you would select is like, a tree and it has a unit ID.
Yeah.
And you put that unit ID in the expression and it will just open that asset in
Like-
Cityworks.
Like you can with Survey 123, I just didn't know. if
Yeah,
Cityworks
you-
accepted it the same.
Yeah, I mean, like with Survey 123, sometimes you pass a lot more information than you need, or not that you need, but opening it directly in Cityworks, like that is the asset in GIS, so you don't need all the other information.
Yeah,
Like
so,
for a tree, like maybe the planting area width, it's in GIS already, so like in pass it to Survey 123, it's not in GIS, and you have to send that over. But doing this, it's already in ArcGIS, so you don't need to do that.
yeah, so here's a flow control catch basin, I'll click open asset and respond. And this is all the information from the GIS, and then I'm able to go in and check out like where their work orders. This link is getting in the way, so I can't. Trying to move the. So like, there's no work orders for this one, there's no inspections, but the rest of the attribute information is directly from ArcGIS.
Theoretically, you could have a work order pass attribute information to GIS though, like if you needed to update fields based on information gathered by a field worker. We haven't quite gotten to that level because we're still on ArcMap and the geometric network. And it doesn't work.
We're running at 60% still.
Now we are developing a public facing survey that will pass the answers to the survey into GIS as a service request. Well, actually, no, it's going to pass it directly into Cityworks as a service request using their API. So you will have like the customer's name and their comments in the JSON of the query string, and that'll insert it directly into the service request. And that's just waiting for me.
That's very cool, because now you can get feedback from the public.
Yes, it's and we still have to run it through review with IT as far as like, someone needs to review the survey submitted, and at what point do we review it? Like, is it on submission? Does it go into a queue somewhere? Or does it just go right into Cityworks and someone reviews it in there?
Does the city use Cityworks for all the departments? Like, is there, using it for the transportation department for?
We're in a multi-year rollout system. We have most of the utilities in it now. Facilities is in it, transportation will be in it, maybe in the fall. I don't know what else is planned for that, but there are some interoperability issues where parks might request assistance from the graffiti abatement team that is not in Cityworks, where we just have to either trigger some sort of notification or email when they need to talk to them.
Answer is all city assets at some point will be in Cityworks, but it's a long, large project, so.
We've been lucky enough to sharing some of your transportation recently acquired, like transportation data and sidewalks.
Yeah.
So I just wondered whether that was an ongoing.
It's ongoing, and I'm hoping that we will be chewing on those same assets this fall.
And Willow Lake, the sewage treatment plant is in there also. So I think, like Devin said, every asset that we have should hopefully be in there.
Thank you. Great. So, and our last couple of presentations is from John from ESRI, and in case people don't know, this is going to probably be his very last meeting at this quarter's meeting, because he will be retiring as of the end of January.
End of January.
So
Wow.
Thank you for being here with us all these years.
We'll believe it when we see it.
Well,
that?
there's that
Believe it
too.
when we see it.
No, it's been 40 years working in the industry, so, gotta give credit to our arts department. So we've been getting a lot of really cool slides, decks to work from. So I'm here to talk kind of highlights about the user conference, and then I'm going to talk about digital twins in a bit more detail. So let me move ahead here. All right, so user conference was last month in July. Here are the rough numbers on things, 19,000 people. So we kind of feel like we're past the COVID.
Is that the largest you see today?
Yeah, I think the in-person attendees, certainly because of COVID, we had to redesign how we delivered the conference, and that kind of begat the whole virtual environment. So now we're combining it. That's a pretty sizable crew. Couple things I'll point out is the technical workshop sessions. There were 150 were live streamed, but some of those were repeats, particularly popular topics. But this is why it's important that when you come around to the next user conference, that you get folks to sign up at least virtually, because there's no cost for the virtual attendees if you're up to speed on your ESRI maintenance bills and stuff. And you can have as many folks within your organization can sign up for that. And what that gives you is post-user conference, you get access to all the things that were recorded. So it's a really wealthy collection of things that you can use for training purposes or finding out, what we're up to software development. So I really encourage, next year when time comes to figure out what you're going to do, if you're going to go to the user conference, make sure that folks within your organizations know how to sign up for that. So that's kind of the numbers part of it here. What I'm going to focus on in terms of highlights is what I figured was important to this group, which is what we're doing software development wise. I mean, certainly there's a lot of really interesting things that you can review through the plenary videos. That first day of the conference is always made public. And a lot of what I'm going to touch on was touched on there too. But my focus for today was really on kind of what's important for you to know from a software development standpoint. And so there's a number of things I'm going to touch on here that I think it's important to understand. And of course, I'm sure you're hearing this from all your software vendors, is the whole artificial intelligence or AI environment. And that's happening big time at ESRI as well. We've had AI in our software for really 6 to 7 years. Most of you probably have not had any encounter with it unless you were doing a lot of modeling with raster data sets. We have had a lot of capabilities that allowed you to extract features from raster data sets that were kind of our initial forays into AI. that is still a big part of what we're doing. And we're expanding it to work with other kinds of data sets and continue to build models that are really quite interesting to look at, and maybe you can leverage. So if you're in the business of gathering imagery or raster data sets, and you want to see what you can get out of those, I mean, you definitely should be up to speed on that aspect of our software. And it initially just showed up inside of ArcGIS Pro, but it is expanding out into ArcGIS Online and Enterprise as well. The new thing that's on the horizon is really the family of generative AI. So if you're familiar with ChatGPT, that's what generative is. And those are going to show up in the software in the form of AI assistance. So we actually, some of this has been released in Survey 123. There's a bunch coming for Hub, which is really quite interesting with respect to providing services to the public. So I've got some demos that I could show you what it looks like, but basically it's going to be an interface for folks to ask questions of your data and other data sets. And it's really, I think it's going to be pretty groundbreaking in terms of how we communicate GIS function. Whoops, what happened there? Oops. Back to here. AI is also showing up in ArcGIS Pro. And I've actually been on the beta testing team, and you're going to see interface that primarily works with documentation, but also with a lot of our other stuff, other messages going on here. So assistance, a lot of interesting work being done. It's being led by the former product manager for Survey 123, Ishmael Shavit, who many of you I know have had more person-on-person contact with. He originally was one of the enterprise product managers, then he kind of took the Survey 123 thing, and now he's moving on to all things AI. It's a pretty interesting topic within the company because there's also a lot of questions. There's also a lot of fears around AI and what the rules are going to be and what does it mean from a legal standpoint. So there's a lot more interesting review of what we're doing in terms of AI than I've seen in any other product, because there is some concerns related to what if we release a product and somebody asks a question, you know, like my house is on fire. What's the guardrails that ESRI has to put in our software to make sure that we don't deliver bad or perhaps dangerously misleading information? So it's quite an interesting project. Essentially what's going to happen is we're going to provide to you a large language model that speaks ESRI, and then you're going to be able to build your own models next to that speaks your data or what current things you're sharing. So that's something that we'll start seeing the end of this year and into next year. The other big thing to pay attention to is all things 3D. A lot of work with regards to web-based 3D interfaces. So this is an example of why everything has been shifting from JavaScript 3 to 4, because 4 has in it the ability to work with 3D data. So it's one of the big drivers. I think we're really seeing an environment that is becoming much more commonplace and much more reflective of real-time conditions than we have in the past. I think all of us have fooled around with building 3D models, but a lot of times they're pretty static. Because of improvements in technology and new technologies, we're starting to see environments that are much more close to real-time conditions. And that actually is what I'm going to talk about when I talk a little bit on digital twins. So this is just an interesting example. You might think of this, and it's a little herky-jerky because of the internet access and everything that's running here, but you might think of this as somebody doing a video, taking a camera shot as a helicopter spins around. But this is a 100% digital model. So what you're seeing here is a combination of LiDAR data and imagery data. These were all sourced from a drone. And on top of that, we put some building models in it. But it's all a digital representation. It's not a screenshot. So the capabilities, particularly since the drone technologies are becoming more commonplace, the ability to build something like this has gotten drastically cheaper because the acquisition process is less costly and much easier to do. So I'll get into this a little bit later on digital twins. Next slide. Oops. All right. Okay, another big emphasis this year is that ESRI has been changing our licensing model. And this has been, depending upon where you are with your software licensing, it could be painful or wonderful. It has been, I think, clumsily put forth from ESRI. It's been kind of a changing message. So it's been a little difficult for us on the sales side of the company to explain what's going on. But from a big picture standpoint, we are shifting from the licensing model that we've had for a long time, which was primarily tying software licensing to a particular computer or to particular organizations, depending on how you deploy it, to users. And this is not just an ESRI thing. This is pretty much across the board with your major software vendors. So the reasons behind that is we want to be able to get access anywhere, anytime on any device. And we want you to have a way of carrying your user-specific information and capabilities, like what licenses is your organization granting. We want those to be portable. And also be able to store your particular characteristics as part of your user identity. So this is a significant shift. It also reflects the changes in the IT industry. So many of you have been users for a long time, might have had software deployments that were concurrent licenses tied to your particular network, or licenses that were tied to a particular machine. Well, since we're all working in different environments, or maybe working from home sometimes, and in the office at other times, we really needed a fundamentally different model. So if your organization uses Office 365, it's exactly the same thing that's going on. The other aspect of this that you need to be aware of is that ESRI's technology often is dependent on other vendors' technology. So as an example, the license manager, FlexLM, that's not an ESRI product. That was a product by a company called Global Alliance 15, 20 years ago. They, have been bought and sold by different companies, and now it actually belongs to the Canadian Teachers investment fund. And they rightfully have decided, no, there's no market for this anymore. ESRI, you're the only person that's still using it. We're killing this product, right? So FlexLM doesn't have anybody maintaining it anymore. Another example is with ArcMap. The software libraries that Microsoft developed back in the 90s, which we built ArcMap on, has been deprecated. They're actually the last implementation went from Microsoft for that was stopped in June 22. Right? We can't make new versions of ArcMap because that underlying library no longer exists as far as Microsoft is concerned. So we're constantly dealing with that. And another example, Web App Builder, which is JavaScript 3. We had software libraries in there. And Eric, do you remember which one was it? Is it Dojo? Dojo. That they decided, well, we're done. We're not making any money. The people who created it, we're not going to make any upgrades to it, so it's dead, which makes our stuff dead. So that's the kind of thing that we're constantly having to deal with in terms of upgrades. So anyway, the big news is we're trying to simplify this very complex licensing environment through a number of stages over the next few years. The big thing to take away from this is that we're moving to a user-based system rather than organization licensing and particular computer licensing. Other big news is the fruits of Microsoft and Autodesk working together that we did 4 or 5 years ago. We kind of stopped fighting each other and said, let's get along and work together. We're really starting to show up in all of our technology. We exchange data formats freely, and we can write and read in each other's technology. So it's becoming more and more prominent, particularly around the area of working with building models. So there's a lot of stuff with regards to interior spaces and actual design models in our software. Another big emphasis for ESRI is making systems, making ArcGIS integrate with other systems. So you've heard a little bit of that with Cityworks. Cityworks is one of our favorite business partners for doing things like this, but because everybody is moving to a web services world, which is really what ArcGIS Align and Enterprise is about, it makes it, there's a more consistent way of making our products talk to one another. And a good example of that is what Microsoft, if you're a Microsoft 365 consumer, depending upon the individual licensing that is granted by your organization, you get exposure directly to ESRI technology in there. So we partner with Microsoft and we work on those integrations for tighter and tighter sharing of data. Web mapping, obviously this is primarily how people are going to get to GIS is through web services, web mapping, which in our world is ArcGIS Enterprise and Online. Typically, whatever new things we introduce occur first in ArcGIS Align, and then the next major release of Enterprise takes all those changes and brings them up to speed. So like right now, for example, all this new licensing has already showed up in ArcGIS Align. But when the next version of Enterprise comes out in November, the version 11.4, it also will reflect this changes to the licensing environment for access to web services. Spatial analysis across the board, and I should have pointed out that I'm talking about, everything I've talked about so far is really kind of across the products. I haven't really got down too much into this products specifics here. But spatial analysis and data science. So we're seeing across the board additional tools showing up and new things. Like here, we're going to see model builder inside of ArcGIS Online. Right. So that's a lot of the work that's on the future for that. The ability to work with large raster data sets, a lot of work with that, a lot of work with video, also across the platform. And here's an example of some of the new analysis. This is modeling floodplain. So in this case, a flood event happens, so much rain falls in this basin, and you want to see how it works. So this is some of the new stuff that's going into our analysis library across the board. So actually this data, I'm pretty sure, is from up in Washington somewhere. Real time is becoming a bigger and bigger factor for folks, particularly in local government space. We're having a lot of agencies wanting to keep track of fleet vehicles doing work. So oftentimes their first forays into real time is connecting their AVL systems they may have on their agency's vehicles and bringing them in. So oftentimes it'll show up as like keeping track of where the snowplows are, or keeping track of where they're street sweeping, so that the city can report, you know, how much street sweeping effort is being done in relation to pollution that goes into the water system. It's MS4 for those folks who understand the reporting on that. But we're seeing also a lot of web applications. So this is a web application working with data in Hong Kong, keeping track of what's going on with the trains as they move through the subway system. In this case, they're using velocity, and I should point out, let me go back here. So our initial forays into web services and real-time data sources was a thing called GeoEvent Server, which is pretty heavy lift for most organizations. Here in Oregon, that was used by City of Portland to work with their snowplow systems. Hillsborough uses it for street sweeping, recording street sweeping, things like that. That was based on premise. So in other words, you have to set up the servers to consume that data. Then we introduced velocity, which is kind of the same idea, but it all runs in the cloud. And apparently, we're going to bring a version of velocity back down to on-premise or in your own private cloud. I think it's mostly because it's an easier package to work with, and we provide all the structures for dealing with large volumes of data. And that's what real-time data sources, the big lift for dealing with real-time data is, what do you do with this stream, potentially billions and billions of data points. So it is an area that people are taking more interest in. Indoor GIS is becoming pretty, we're seeing a lot more of this, particularly because people have good digital models of their buildings. It's becoming much more common. They want to maybe manage that for where people are hoteling, let's say, or what equipment is installed. So this is another area that's grown quite a bit, and across the board in, on enterprise and ArcGIS Align and on field devices. For instance, really interesting one here is in our area is the Portland School District uses it to keep track of their classrooms in terms of maintenance and has it been cleaned, for COVID prevention purposes too. So lots of stuff going on in that area. Right, so that's kind of across the board. We'll talk a little bit more about specific products. So Pro, it's just kind of a typical pattern of us adding new tools. There are some fairly interesting ones with being able to work more with your schema designs, reporting on that, adding PDFs to a map. I think that's pretty recent. But nothing I would say is huge. The extensions, right, so there's 3 areas that we provide extension. The ones that most folks are familiar with is spatial analyst or 3D analyst. And those, because of the change the way we're doing licensing, and I didn't really get into this, but if you have a named user license, which has been assigned a Pro Advanced user type, all those extensions are now part of that user type. One thing I should have mentioned about the licensing is the creator license, which we've had for quite some time, used to, what it was used there is for creating new items in the portals, either ArcGIS Align or Enterprise. Well, now the Pro Basic license is part of your creator license. So if you have creator, you have Pro. It's wrapped together in one subscription, which was quite different. The other thing that's happened is Pro Basic now works with, you can actually edit enterprise geodatabases. So in other words, data that's stored inside SQL Server or Oracle or Postgres. And that was something we didn't have previously. So that we now have these creators, professional and professional plus. Those are the 3 different levels of the software, which equates to, for those of you who've been around for a long time, that was ArcView, ArcMap Standard, and ArcMap Advanced. So where names have changed, products have changed, but some of the concepts are. The other categories of extensions, the data management one, these typically are additional costs, often because they have royalties involved with them. In other words, we have to pay, like for data interop. That's essentially safe software and that FME that's been configured specifically inside of our products. So, but when you get the license, we have to pay a royalty to save for that. Some of these other ones are probably, for those folks that are doing a lot of production mapping, those are extensions, like NOAA and the FAA, and they either use those things. They're not typically something we see in our local government user environments. Enterprise, big change coming with this, of course, is the new licensing that's already deployed in ArcGIS Online. Some new, I should have mentioned earlier, web editor. So we now have a new standalone application inside of ArcGIS Align, which is a web editing tool. So that also will show up in the next version of Enterprise in November. Other thing about I want to point out is for those of you who have to administer Enterprise, you're not aware of this website, you should go take a look. It's called architecture.arcgis.com. So basically, this is for the administrators in your organization on how to set up your infrastructure, your server environments, how do you scale them, all that sort of stuff is covered in this new website. So if you're an administrator, you should be familiar with this.
Can you give us a copy of the slides so that we can?
Yeah,
post it?
I'll give you a PDF version of the
Yeah,
slides.
perfect.
ArcGIS Online, we talked about the recycle bin. So this is basically the tool that you can use to back up if you make mistakes. Essentially what it's doing is it's storing a previous state of the data for up to 14 days. Currently, that's the window. You can't adjust that window. So if you made a mistake, you better figure it out in 14 days. Also, as part of, there's a new metadata editor. You can see that it's ArcGIS Online is growing 33%, and that's been pretty consistent. So you can see it's becoming pretty huge environment for us. Hub, the big thing that's on the horizon for that, I've already talked about, that's the AI assistant, which I think is going to really change the way that you present your data to the public, because we've got this interface that essentially allows folks to, in an interactive way, discover things about your data or ask questions about your data. So that's pretty huge. Some changes have been made to data downloads and also discussion boards, map-based discussion boards. So you can bring up a map and start a discussion on a particular topic through Hub. Solutions. So these are the freely available maps and apps. If you're up to speed on your ESRI maintenance bill, you get access to, and this is constantly changing and being updated. Like for instance, some of the newer ones, street sweeping. There's a whole collection of maps and apps related to street sweeping. And so this is constantly changing, being updated. Experience Builder, well, we talked about this a little bit. And the big news is Express Mode. Or formerly, when Jen Shaw was visiting us earlier this year, she was calling it Web App Builder Mode. So what it does is it allows you, it essentially turns off temporarily if you want, a lot of the capabilities of Experience Builder. As an example, Web App Builder was limited to one map. That it was map centric, and you had one scene, and that made it fairly limited. But you could also consider that as an advantage, right? Because you just had to deal with one screen as you design your apps. So what this Express Mode does is essentially dumb down Experience Builder to what was possible in Web App Builder, right? So it gives you, it can't take your existing Web App Builder applications, it can't take those and convert them. But what it does is it gives you a landing spot to redeploy on Experience Builder with essentially the same equivalency to what Web App Builder did. We couldn't do a conversion because of the software libraries that Web App Builder had, the Dojo stuff. They didn't want to upgrade to JavaScript 4, so we couldn't make a direct conversion on it. So this is the answer for this, where it essentially gives you a dumbed down experience builder interface that matches what was possible in Web App Builder. The nice thing about it though is once you move things over and you decide you do want to go up, scale up, or take advantage of the new things in Experience Builder, it's just, you turn off the mode, right? And then you've got full Experience Builder for you. So the idea behind this is basically giving you an equivalent landing page in design layouts that you had in Web App Builder. So it's not a conversion tool. It's a conversion aid, I guess is the way to think of it.
Training wheel.
Yeah, it's training wheel. That's good. I'm going to use that one. So that's what the story is behind Experience Builder. Okay, so those are my highlights of user conference. Certainly, if you had been registered, either for actually, can you tell how many folks went in attendance down there? Okay, how many were attended virtually? Okay, so if I know that they finished uploading all of the videoed sessions and the PowerPoints have been uploaded as PDFs inside your user conference account login. So they were, I think they finished doing that on the 15th, a week ago or so. So please take advantage of that.
They just sent out.
Oh, they just sent out the email for it. Okay. So yeah, certainly dig in, a lot of really good information there. If for some reason you want a download of the video, or if you want a PowerPoint version of the PDFs, you can let myself or John Ruffing or Sarah Lau, depending upon who you're working with, let us know and we can see if we can get those for you. Question?
So, new licensing. What does new licensing look like for ELA folks?
It's it depends if you're a negotiated EA, which is typically big organizations like Portland, versus well, what do we call it? Your EA is a fixed small government. Actually, you should not see any particular changes unless you're using, if you're using concurrent licensing. Okay. So one of the big messages to understand is concurrent licensing is going away because it does not work in this user-specific way. If you have concurrent licensing, there's a trade, and I don't know what the trade is, but basically any concurrent fixed or one concurrent seat equals so many fixed seats. The other complication is you have a choice to move from perpetual licensing to subscription licensing. So your Microsoft 365 licenses are subscriptions. That's your only option. Perpetual licensing, which most of you probably have, was you buy the software and then you pay maintenance on it every year. So slightly different flavor. There's subscription, which you pay in advance for the next year. And you get any updates or anything going on during that year. And then if you want to walk away, you can walk away. Perpetual licensing is you own the software. It's yours to use and keep forever. And if you stop paying maintenance, you can still keep using it. But if you want upgrade software support and upgrades and all that, you have to be current in maintenance. So they're slightly different sorts of environments. So to answer Kirk's question about what does this mean for licensing for EAs? It kind of depends on your deployment. Across the board, though, understand that there is been typically a 5% increase for cost, because we're dealing with, you know, all the inflation that was going on. And in the past, we only did those increases when they were costs kept going, and every few years we would revisit it and then typically raise the cost of stuff. Now they're going to try doing a regular small increase every year with it. So that can impact your EA over the duration of your EA. So you really need to deal with your account managers on what all this licensing changes means for you. And in the Oregon accounts, it's going to be either John Ruffing or Sarah Lau. It's been a pretty complicated issue, but let me give you a little context. Years ago, when I first started working at ESRI, there's one product, and it was relatively expensive per person. Around per license, it was about $18,000 per seat with it. And then we introduced some newer technology. Those of you who might remember ArcView, the 2.x or 3.x stuff. And that seat of ArcView was like $1,000. So you could do 85% of GIS in this $1,000 product versus the workstation ArcInfo. So there was a huge shift that our corporate leadership, Jack Dangerman and all the board of directors, you know, there was at one point we had a meeting, and Jack was in a room like this with all the solution engineers we were visiting, and he came in there. We're just about to release ArcView 2.x. He came up to us and said, "What's the competition for ArcInfo workstations?" And we would go, "Oh, it's not GeoMedia, it's Intergraph, right?" And he'd say no. And he'd go over to somebody else and say, "What's the competition for ArcInfo workstation?" One of us would answer what we thought. And he'd say, "No, you guys have to understand what I'm telling you right now. The biggest competitor for this $18,000 product is this $1,000 product. If we, ESRI corporate, get this wrong, the company will cease to exist, right?" We are at a similar time right now, and the licensing changes are really reflecting the fact that there's a big shift in how people are getting to GIS. Our bread and butter has been ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap previous to that. And we are encouraging our users to rethink how they deploy the technology. As an example, City of Portland had 700 licenses of ArcMap, right? Or somewhere in that range. We've introduced a lot of technology that could replace what was truly needed for customers inside the City of Portland. They don't need the big heavy desktop like Pro or ArcMap in that case. They need a web app, right? So we're at one of these points at ESRI of figuring out, okay, we're fundamentally changing how to get access to GIS. We need to do this in such a way that we don't wreck the finances, because ESRI is a private company, but it runs zero debt, and Jack wants to continue that sort of model. So just kind of understand that this is a big transition time. We're really moving from the way that software was licensed to a completely different way. So anyway, I'll get off my horse with that. Okay, we've got just a few minutes to talk about digital twins.
I did see a question pop into the chat. Someone
Okay.
wanted to know who's replacing you.
Who's replacing me? Actually, two people are replacing me. For the larger accounts, which is City of Portland and the large counties and Salem, is Shannon Stern. She's a solution engineer at ESRI. She's been at ESRI for a couple of years. She was formerly in this part of the St. Louis office. And her husband got an opportunity for a job in Portland. So it worked out that she's transferred. So she's going to take care of the larger accounts in Oregon, which is the bigger counties and the bigger cities. Ryan Richardson, which many of you probably have met, is going to take over. He has already taken over most of my responsibilities for Sarah LaPlow's accounts, which are the smaller tier cities and counties.
So who do I email when I want one of you to come to the users group?
Actually, you should email both John and Sarah. And you'll learn from, Ryan. Ryan's actually come, and Sarah's been in some of these meetings, right? But I'm proud to say it takes two people to. And I'll be around till the end of January. And I'll probably attend these things as a user, but I do have a personal license to all of our software, so I will.
You just won't be able to give us any insider information anymore.
Yeah, no more insider information. Okay, so this next topic is digital twins, because we've got quite a bit of activity going on in this area, and we've had quite a bit of questions coming from our larger cities in our region. So myself and Ryan Richardson have been working on digital twins. And so what is a digital twin? There's different interpretations of this, but the idea is it's a virtual representation, a model of the real world. It's important to point out, though, that a true digital twin, has some, we want to make sure that it is reflecting the current state of the data. A lot of folks that have done 3D modeling, it's oftentimes very static. So build this nice model of something and then it goes on a shelf. Digital twins should reflect the current state of the data. So there's this real-time access, a real-time aspect to this. ESRI is part of a digital twin consortium. The team within ESRI that works on this is the 3D team. So these are the folks in the Zurich 3D R&D office folks. So if you've ever seen presentations by Gert Van Maren, he's the leader of this particular team. Our perspective, digital twins primarily are 3D environments. So all of the systems that make up ArcGIS have become 3D aware. Even it's important to understand that when you're working with a digital twin, not all the data necessarily is 3D. It might be 2D, but it's being presented in a 3D environment. I'll show you an example of this here in a minute. There is no product called digital twin. It involves essentially all of these things feeding the model or displaying the model. So most interaction with folks, consumers of digital twins are really going to be coming through web services oriented environments. So this could be inside a web browser, could be inside Fieldmaps, could be in a custom app. But it's gonna be primarily, through web services. All right, so let me actually demo. Hopefully this is still up and running. Yes. Right, so this is Zurich. This is a scene viewer, so this is not a custom application. It is live, or should be. You've seen some of the newer tools. You've seen the rippling on the wind, and I'll show you how you can change what's the speed of the wind, and stuff like that. But what's interesting about this, let me zoom to one of my bookmarks here. So what you're seeing here is primarily public available data from Zurich that is on their open data site with ArcGIS Online stuff. There's very little of this is not already public data. If you look in the background, at the hills in the background, that's coming from an ArcGIS Online terrain model with imagery draped on it. And then as you move forward in the scene, you're seeing a mix of open source buildings. As we get closer here, you are seeing more detailed buildings that the city of Zurich has built and have made those available. So you're seeing a mix of services are coming in here. As we get closer, you start seeing these photorealistic. This is coming from drone overflights over Zurich. And in that drone overflight, we captured imagery and LiDAR. And so the LiDAR is being used to build the models close in, and the imagery that was captured has been captured in a mesh draped on top of that. So most of this was already existing data sources that have been assembled here. And just to kind of show one other thing here. So if you're not aware of it already, open this. So this is part of the Living Atlas. Hopefully it'll check here. Why are we not catching up? Oh, let me log in again. Yeah. Talk too much. Well, I'll just go to, where's my seat? Let's see, where are we here? Oh, we're somewhere close to this. So if you're not aware of it, there's worldwide coverage of all the buildings on the planet, right? These are photogrammetrically derived, and they're part of, from the OpenStreetMap environment. So no matter where you are in the world, you can go get at least this starting point, right? That does not necessarily give you the detailed buildings that were in, oops, let me find my third model. As is often the case for cities, is that they'll build more detailed models than what you just saw in Living Atlas. But at least you can start with the Living Atlas, building your more digital twin. So let me go with some more details here. So this is an industry model. This is one of the universities. This is actually where Einstein studied. That's his cubicle right there, or his little study area. And so this is another data source. So you can pretty much, you can get into our other technologies can come immediately into this. If we go here, this is the train station, and we've got a building model right here that came out of Autodesk. And if we go into the building, you can kind of see the detail that's there. Another data set to apply on top of that was an internal LiDAR scanner. Point cloud, and it should fill it in here. There we go. So this is the raw point cloud data. And so you can see how it corresponds to the actual built model. On time.
In about 5 minutes.
Okay. Some other example areas to look at. Here. So we've got the underlying mesh model that displays the photorealistic. But if I clicked on some of these buildings, like this one here, notice that it's kind of, there's a few of these buildings are colored. And it's an object. It's a two-dimensional object of it's the footprint from the building. But because that 2D can be draped, that's what it looks like here. So pretty much anything you have is 2D can have an impact on your model. And let's see, what other? I think this one is showing, let's see here.
Where are those train wires coming from? Like,
What's that?
the train wires,
It's the train wires are the electrical network that, this was not a utility network. This is just lines, and they've been symbolized. And they were probably, well, I think.
Part of the transit?
Yeah, it's part of the transit system infrastructure. I don't think it's a utility network in this example. But it could come from scans too, LiDAR scanning. I don't think these are active lines, but but it's another source that they added in. Let's see here. This is another, this one actually is a interior model that we have also the underground part of it here. And these are active features. So I think if I click on these, so that's coming from This could be a utility model. I'd have to dig into it a bit more. And let's see here. Get that out of the way. Oh, I'll finish up with one other aspect here. Right, so this is, I think this is showing a routing. I think this is coming from the university through town up to this, I don't know Zurich that well. But it will finish populating here in a second. Probably should have cached this in. But let me finish on this other cool thing. Is let's change the weather. It's snowing. And we'll increase the cloud coverage. We'll put snow on the ground. Increase this. It may take a minute before it's got to finish the buildings before it puts the snow on the building roofs. Anyway, a lot of this stuff, Gert, who's obviously an expert, it says it took him an hour to build this. Just from data that already exists. So you could, right now, go home and build a scene of your area using stuff that's publicly available off Living Atlas, and put snow, make it rain. And then of course, if you've got your own data sources, you can put them on top of it. I think one thing that this reflects is that the importance of imagery and specifically drone technologies. There's a lot you can do with that is very cost effective for gathering. Like all that downtown scenery and those detailed, those photorealistic buildings, because of using drone technology. So a lot of possibilities. Questions?
I saw a comment come in about the lines that we were looking at. From Dan, yeah. About these learning models for power line.
I don't know what the history was on the power, but certainly we have seen examples in the deep learning system for deriving power lines. There is a model that's in the deep learning. There's a whole library, hundreds of models that are part of the ArcGIS online system that you can download and plug into to models, say extracting buildings, extracting river networks, road networks, extracting power lines and stuff like that from imagery collections that you have.
Hi, John. Can you hear me? It's David here again.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, you can hear me all right, can you? It's David.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Can I just say on behalf of everyone in the Northwest and beyond, we are really grateful, I certainly am, to have known you this long, and you can't go anywhere. You have to stay involved, because we like you and you have so much to offer. And I really mean that, John is one of the first people I met in the Northwest in the year 2000, 2001-ish when I first came to this area. And I think we met very soon after that and have been in touch ever since. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. And, we will miss you, and so do stay involved, and hopefully you'll come to Seaside. And so on that note, next month is the Northwest GIS conference in Seaside, Oregon. So just up the street for you guys, so please do come to that, and please do something collaborative for that event. I certainly have been pushing this for years, as some of you know. Rather than giving a standard sort of presentation, which can be great, do something where you really get the audience involved, so you could talk for 10 or 15 minutes, say, and then start to ask a lot of questions, get people talking to each other, really change the model to one of collaboration as opposed to just you facing an audience full of people. And it tends to be a bit of a one-way approach. So please do that, you know. But yeah, John, thank you so much. And like I said, yeah, hopefully you'll come there too, and we'll see you there before you go. And whatever you do, stay involved. You know, we need you.
Well, I'm not gonna make it to Northwest GIS because I had a previously scheduled vacation.
No.
So I'm not gonna make it there, but I'll probably be back here at the next meeting. I appreciate, you know, all the years. Been fortunate to work in an industry that's endlessly fascinating, I think. And I've been really fortunate to work for ESRI. I gotta thank Jack and Laura for that. And I'm really fortunate to work with the people I do because honestly, ESRI has some of the most brilliant people. And they all have to have a passion to work at ESRI. Jack has set up the hiring process in such a way that he wants people to prove that they're very passionate about this technology. And if you don't have that capability, you eventually don't last at ESRI. So it's a pretty dedicated crew. I know we're a private company, but that's mostly just so that we can do the fun things that we do. Jack doesn't take really much money out of the company at all for personal purposes. It's just keep the thing running. So I've been very fortunate where I've been at, but I am going to miss things like this, and I am planning to keep involved in the technology. In fact, so I've got a 4-week vacation in Australia, most of which is actually on a boat from Sydney to Seattle. And so I'm going to set up a daily story map of where I am and where
Cool.
I'll share that out.
And I'll put it on the website.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Not miss you. You're still gonna be involved.
Well, I think 40